Hi, good day everyone. So, welcome to session 2 again. Uh, and we are gonna just kickstart with the Docker architecture. That is what is the agenda of today's session. And before even getting into the agenda of this Docker architecture, let me just quickly go through the last session's keynotes, whatever we have discussed. And you see, the thing is, the way I have devised the strategies of session moving forward is like it will be divided into the five basic modules or four basic modules. So the first thing is whenever we will start any sessions, we will revise the keynotes from the last session, what all discussions we had, so that we can uh, kind of get a hang. I mean, just kind of a revision session, and then I'll be sharing the source of truth. Source of truth is nothing but the source from where I have gathered all this information, because obviously everything is on internet, so it's your own research or what thing you pick up and from where you gather the information from your videos. So this is the Docker Hub information, and this is the Docker website itself. It's a manual. You can go there. If you don't find information informative enough from these videos, you can do your own research. You can go through this manual. There is a copious amount of information Docker has already shared, by going through which you can uh, do your learning by yourself. So yeah. So third thing is there is something called key time or time key topics. So basically, key time are the topics which generally, key means what? It's kind of carry the some special information, special meaning actually. So whatever the special topics, which is very, you need to crawl through a lot through a web to get that information, or little complex to understand all those topics, unique topics we will be discussing into the key time, or the topics which we find. Let's say I am discussing something with you in the session, and in that session we came up with some terminology which we encountered, some terminologies which is quite unique, and it's quite a topic for itself, so which can't be covered into the session itself. So we will throw that topic to the key time topic discussions, and I'll be discussing all these topics with you in the key time videos. So that's basically the concept of the key time or the key topic. You don't need to understand all those stuff as you go by these sessions. You slowly understand all those things, because I know things doesn't get digested at one shot. It depends person to person, but yeah. The fourth thing is we will just gather the unanswered queries or concepts from the last session, right? So, for example, in the last session, we came across Docker engine, right? And I told you we will cover in the forthcoming sessions. So that is what today, even before starting the session 2, I have just showed you like Docker engine we will be covering in this Docker architecture, right? So let's quickly go through the keynotes of the session. What we covered yesterday, we covered like Docker. What is Docker? I explained you Dockerization. I explained you what is a container, what is image, and Docker versus virtual machines. And I gave you the illustration, like let's say you have a local system on which Windows is hosted, and on Windows you have a software be installed. So let's say you want to install or build software be in a Linux operating system. What are the options you have? One way is you get your own machines. In that machine, you are just want to install your Linux or whatever operating system you want to host system be, and then you get the ball rolling from there. Second option you have, you just go to the cloud, fetch the machine from there, and then install software B and achieve your task, attain your task. Another way of doing it is you have Docker container in place. You can build the container, any container you want to build, Linux, Ubuntu, Mac OS, is up to you, and then install software B, and it will be a very easy job. It becomes just a cakewalk or piece of cake for us to easily build a container and do cross platform build, deployment, and the testing right away, making a test container whether it is running on the cross platform or not. So yeah, that's what Docker versus virtual machines we discuss, and then we discuss like Docker and Maven. So we discuss like Maven is a tool. We discussed like Maven is a tool which helps you to write a code by pulling the dependencies on the code you needed, and you can use those libraries, those APIs, the function of those libraries to build your project. Docker has the same inclination like Maven itself. So Docker will help you to pull the system level dependencies that you need to run your whole application as a build. So for that, Docker is very useful. Docker So that's what we discussed. So Maven has a POM file where you mention all those dependencies. Similarly, Docker has its own file structure. It uses YAML file, it uses Docker file, and excuse me, sorry. In that Docker file, you can just mark all your commands, and from there, you can build your from that image you can build your container, and you can ship that container anywhere you want, right? And yeah, it's a very if you look at the Docker icon itself, it's a whale, and on that whale, it's like a cargo ship, right? On which there are many containers placed. So it's the same concept, but in the software, the in the terminology of software development. So you just build your container, and you can ship your container anywhere you want. You want to ship it to the cloud, you can ship it to the cloud. You want to ship it to any virtual machine, you can ship it to virtual machine. It's just a matter of just creating an image out of your application. So that's what we discussed Maven. And then I also explained you why we need to do the comparison with virtual machine and the Maven to take a closer look into the Docker. It will help you understand Docker. It will help us understanding Docker more closely if you start doing comparison with the virtual machine, start doing comparison with the Maven. Right. So that is what the point about Maven and VMs. And then we discussed Docker as a platform, containerization. I explained you what is container. I explained you why do we use images. I explained you, and I also gave an illustration to you of a bare bone machine where you want to install Windows as a system. So you need an image of window or ISO file to install software on that. Similarly, image is kind of a software only on any operating system you use while building a container. So that is what the discussion at the high level as a keynote I have just delivered to you, which we discussed on the last session. If you still forgot something, you can always go to last session and revise it. So before wasting any further time, let's get started with our session 2 because we have to cover Docker architecture in that. So Docker architecture, here is the quick agenda that I'll be covering. It's just a client server architecture. I don't need to explain this because you are studying Docker. That means you're already well versed of client server architecture. So Docker is completely based out of client server architecture. There's nothing new about it, and most of the application are. And we have, if you talk about the components of the Docker or the building blocks of the Docker, there are three major components which we must understand in order to understand the architecture of the Docker in order to get along with the Docker. The first thing is we have Docker client, and Docker client also has three further components. We will discuss in these components in detail. Then we have a Docker host, and then we have a Docker registry. Why we have all those things, why we are, what's the use of each and every component, we will discuss in detail. One point I would like to mention here, see the first session was a theoretical session. We did not do any practical. This session will also be more or like a theoretical session only, but I hope from third or fourth session we will kickstart our demo and we will just see how Docker actually works, because right now these things are very important for anybody to get started with the Docker, because these are the basics. If you don't know basics, you won't be able to understand anything. You won't be able to understand what's going on. You can run the commands, but you won't get anything out of it, and that could be a problematic for you in the long run if you start working in the company or if you start working in any projects. So yeah, we need to understand these basics. So let's get our focus back to Docker architecture. Now, Docker architecture, if we have to, if I have to talk about Docker architecture here, see, there are three components to it. See, the number one component we have Docker client. It's a client server architecture, right? So we have a Docker client. Then we have a Docker host, and then we have a Docker registry. So this is Docker client. This is Docker host, right? And this is Docker registry. Now, what is registry? See, registry, if we talk about Docker registry, is a collection of repositories. Repository we all are aware of. You must have used GitHub. GitHub is a repository where you store your code base. Similarly, excuse me, sorry, Docker also has a registry in which it stores the repositories, number of repositories, user repositories, project specific repositories you can store here. And in each repository, Docker repository, we can store images, your project specific images, your Docker images. So it's a repository 1, repository 2, we have image 1, we have image 2. So this is what the registries comprises of, right? Now what is Docker host? See, Docker host is a server. You can say it as a server, or it contains a daemon, Docker daemon. Now you can call this daemon a controller, you call this daemon a process, you call this daemon a thread, or it's so this Docker daemon is responsible for doing all the operations. You call it as a servlet, whatever you want to name it, you name it. It does all the operations based on the commands that it gets from the client. Okay, from the client, whatever commands it will get, this Docker daemon reads it, and then it will go through or search through the repository here, or if it has present in this Docker host, whatever resources it needs, it will fetch those resources, process the task from the command, and return it back, return a response back to the client. That is what Docker daemon does. We call it as a Docker daemon. And it has a command line name called Dockerd. Okay. It has a name called Dockerd. And also it has, you can use any image. It can use any images present in the host. Maven image it can use Ubuntu image, right? If it is not there, it can always go to Docker registry, read it from there, fetch it back here, store it into the host, and it can return response back to client. Now we have Docker APIs, application programmer interface. APIs is responsible for maintaining the communication between the client and Docker host. Getting it? So that is first host is all about. This host uh, can be in the same host where you have Docker client and Docker hosts. You can install it into the same machine. In our case, for the demo, I don't have an infrastructure setup to show you Docker being hosted in the Docker host being hosted into this different server. For our demo purpose or practical purpose, whatever we will be doing in the same machine. So I will be having client and host installed into the same machine. Now let's talk about Docker client. So Docker client in turn also has three component. One is Docker run, right? And then another one is Docker build. Third one is Docker compose. Important thing about Docker client is that it's a CLI. Docker client is a CLI. See, it's a command line interface. Okay, you need to have a shell. You need to have a grace. That's what in the very first session I have already informed you. Like, if you want to be fluent with the Dockers, having a good grasp on the operating system or shell programming will always help you to get a hang on the Docker concepts, because you see Docker client itself is a CLI. So having a good knowledge of shell, Unix operating system, any operating system will definitely help you in long run. So it's a CLI interface, and by using shell, you can perform operations. We will see all those things in the later videos, and we'll see how things works from there. And there is one more thing, something called Docker Desktop. So it's a GUI component Docker has built up. So when you run your Docker, right, in your local, so by using this Docker app, you can see what's going on with the images. You can track all the you can monitor your containers. What is the status of the containers they are running, in which states they are, what are the resources they are utilizing, what are the images you have in the system, which all repository you are getting it, all kind of, the report. If you want, you can use Docker Desktop as a GUI tool, and you can monitor all those changes from there. Or if you're a fan of shell, then obviously Docker client will help you to do that. And but if not, if you're not pretty much familiar with the CLI, then yeah, Docker Desktop is the way. But I would put emphasis on the shell, because it will really help you in the long run. I mean, you should be able to talk to your system by using a command line rather than a GUI when it comes to deeply understanding the system thoroughly perform. And so yeah, this is what the pretty much about the Docker architecture. These are the major component that work along get things done in Docker. And one more thing, in the last session we were saying Docker engine, right? So see the arrangement of this thing in this manner. This itself, whole discussion of Docker architecture is called the Docker engine. This is what called the Docker engine, the client server architecture. Docker or Docker engine are the same thing only. It's just the LIS to each other. So, well, that's it. That is the pretty much we have in the Docker architecture. Whatever thing I have just explained you, you can see all things are explained here also in this figure. We have a client, Docker host, registry, and same thing they have is being explained here. I have just fetched this image from the Docker manual, or the user manual that we have. I have already showed you this already, so you can go and this things from there. So well then, this is what pretty much we had to discuss here. And the next topic, we would be seeing how we can install Docker in our local system. I will be walking you through it, and we'll see how things work from here. And if you are not getting it, I mean, if you are having a difficulty understanding it, please stay with me, or as we go more deeper into the sessions, I'm pretty much sure like you should be having a good understanding of the Docker, and we should definitely see a light through a tunnel. So thank you very much for joining me. I wish you a good day. Till then, bye bye.